Continuing with our NFC divisional previews, let's go to the NFC South as they have the team that ended up hoisting the Lombardi Trophy last year. Yes, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go into this season with some lofty expectations after Tom Brady goes there last year and wins the Super Bowl in his first year with Tampa Bay. And before we dive deep into Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, everything that is going on for them this season, I wanted to give a shout out to Tom Brady because last year at this time, I knew that him going to Tampa Bay was a good move for the future of his career. I did think that in New England, you could have easily made the argument that Bill Belichick, the GM, failed Tom Brady his last couple of years. The weapons that Brady had in New England were not good enough, and he decided to go to the team with not only great weapons, but a really good offensive line, a really good defense, and a good coach. And when you combine that with how smart and how elite of a football mind and how great of a worker Tom Brady is and how badly he wants to win, Tampa Bay got the job done. They made their dreams come true, and they just deserve so much credit for that. Jason Light, their general manager, deserves an awesome job the way he's put this team together. And I do think that Tampa Bay, they are appropriately the pretty significant favorite going into this season to win the NFC South. Right now, their over-under win total is 11.5, minus 300 to win the NFC South. And I will pick Tampa Bay to win this division with a record of 13-4. The Buccaneers, the first team in the Super Bowl era to win a championship and bring back every single starter from that team a season ago. And if you're a Buccaneer fan, you have all the right in the world to be super excited about this team. The coordinators for this squad, really good. Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles both come back. It is very rare that you see a team win the Super Bowl and not only bring back every single starter, but also both coordinators. We know that Todd Bowles has been a head coach in this league before. Unfortunately for him, it didn't really work out with the New York Jets. Byron Leftwich, I think, is a guy that is going to be a head coach in this league sooner rather than later. I think he did a really good job with the creativity of the offensive play calling towards the back end of last year. And the crazy thing about Tampa Bay is this, right? Last year, you watch them throughout the season, especially throughout like the first 11 or 12 games, and they didn't really look like they were on the same page. And I just remember saying to myself, like, wow, it's really late in this season, and the Buccaneers' chemistry just isn't there. I was not really confident that Bruce Arians was going to be able to get the job done with this team. But when you combine how great their defense was during the playoffs, you guys remember that classic divisional playoff game against the Saints. I think that game really changed in Tampa Bay's favor when linebacker Devin White forced that fumble on Jared Cook. Antoine Winfield picks it up, and the rest is history. Since that play happened, the Bucs just took advantage of that game and ran away with it. I think you could legitimately make the argument, if Antoine Winfield and Devin White, if they don't make that play, then the Saints easily could have won that game, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl run doesn't happen. The other name I wanted to bring up on Tampa Bay, who wasn't even on their team last year. This is a guy that they drafted with actually the last pick in the first round this year, pass rusher from the University of Washington, Joe Tryon. Now, Tryon, he actually didn't play in the COVID-shortened college football season last year. He was at Washington. The Pac-12 obviously only played 5 or 6 games, each team did. So he just thought, okay, I'm just going to showcase my talents and get ready for the draft. And he has been making some noise in the preseason throughout camp. I think he could be a guy that is a big-time defensive player for this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. And when you look at this roster, like Vita Vea, that was the guy that came back last year right before the playoff run, one of the better run stoppers in the league. And right away, he was able to make a significant impact. Jason Pierre-Paul was playing some really good football, getting to the quarterback. Sue, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, like they just have some weapons on this team. Plus, you combine the young secondary full of some really good and improving players. I think Sean Murphy-Bunting Hoisting, the corner, was a guy who was key in that Tampa Bay Buccaneer playoff run last year. Antoine Winfield, Jordan Whitehead, unfortunately, he's going to miss the Week 1 game against Dallas. But the Buccaneers are just a super deep team, and as the defending Super Bowl champions, they absolutely deserve to be one of the favorites and on top of the NFC going into this season. Tampa Bay will be my pick to win the NFC South. Coming in second place, and I'm actually going to predict this team to make the playoffs. Yes, as a wild card with a record of 10-7, my surprise team in the NFC this season is Matt Rule, Sam Darnold, and the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are going to be my pick to finish in second place in the NFC South with a record of 10-6. And right now, Carolina, their over-under number is 7.5. I think they go over. That's one of my better bets for the season. Carolina right now to win the division plus 950. Not ideal odds there. I don't think, or good odds. I don't think it's going to happen. But Carolina, they're a team that I think over the past 2 seasons, they have done a really good job building this roster. I remember when they hired Matt Rule during his first draft last year, they literally drafted every pick they used defense. They spent every single draft pick they had on defense. From Jeremy Chin, from Derek Brown, Brian Burns. There are some really good young defensive players on this team. Yetur Gross-Matos. They drafted J.C. Horn, the corner from South Carolina this year. I think Carolina's defense is actually a pretty solid unit, and it's going to be decent. I think Jeremy Chin is a big-time player. That's someone to look out for. But the reason why I'm optimistic on this Carolina Panther team is they brought in Sam Darnold. And look, I don't think Sam Darnold is some elite quarterback. He was bad under center for the New York Jets. But I spoke about it when we went over the Jets earlier in the show. I think that he just had a terrible situation in New York. No weapons, no offensive line, no real coach. And now Sam Darnold has a real opportunity playing around Christian McCaffrey, one of the best running backs in the league. Hopefully he will be healthy and ready to go to start this season. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. These are really good playmakers and an offensive line that isn't ideal, but they brought in Pat Elflein. Taylor Moton is one of the better right tackles in the league. I think their offensive line could be decent and could help protect Sam Darnold. But the main factor I wanted to talk about with Carolina is coaching. I think Matt Rule actually did a really good job with this team last year. Carolina lost the most one-possession games in the NFL last year, and obviously that sucks if you want to win games. That is a trend that can continue. But considering who the Carolina Panthers were last year, a team that quite frankly was rebuilding, first-year head coach, had a lot of young players on defense, didn't have any real expectations, I think they did a good job losing games that in 2 or 3 years, maybe this year, they'll learn from those, and at least the games were competitive. Like, you remember that game they had against the Kansas City Chiefs when they were a field goal away, albeit a 65-yard field goal away from actually winning that game? They went into Lambeau Field on a Saturday night and almost beat the Green Bay Packers with Teddy Bridgewater throwing no pass longer than like 6 to 7 yards for the entirety of the game. I think with a quarterback that is just naturally more talented than that in Sam Darnold, they could actually be decent and he can make plays. The other guy I love on this Carolina Panther team that I think will be an NFL head coach in this league sooner rather than later is Joe Brady. In college football, LSU just suffered a terrible loss to UCLA, and it had a lot of people saying, Ed Orgeron, what's the deal with this guy? Was he the main reason why LSU and Joe Burrow and those guys were able to win the national championship that year? Even though he's a great coach and a great motivator, no. The main guy responsible for that championship on the coaching staff is Joe Brady, a guy who just knows quarterbacks. And the work that he was able to do with Joe Burrow during last season, or 2 seasons ago at LSU, was phenomenal. Last year, he works with Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy was as okay. Like, we know what Teddy Bridgewater is at this point in his career. And I think you put Joe Brady with a guy like Sam Darnold, a quarterback who had negative coaching. He coached with Adam Gase with the New York Jets. I think Joe Brady runs Adam Gase out of the building in terms of coaching ability, and I do think he will have Sam Darnold in a good position to succeed this year with Carolina. I love Joe Brady as an offensive mind. I really like Matt Rule as a head coach, and Matt Rule had NFL experience. Unlike Urban Meyer, who I mentioned as a coach from college who came into the league and really struggled, and I think has really been struggling so far during camp, and a guy that I think could have his struggles this season communicating with players at the NFL level. I look at Joe Brady. He's actually a guy that has NFL experience prior to his tenure at LSU as he was with the New Orleans Saints. He has experience playing these teams in these divisions. I like Carolina to be the surprise team in the NFC this year. I like them as a wild card. Finishing in third with a record of 9-8 in the NFC South for me is going to be, yes, the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints are a team that it's pretty interesting because they do lose a lot, right? This is going to be the first year in God knows how long, since like 2005, 2006, they're going to go into the season without Drew Brees as their starting quarterback. And I do like Jameis Winston. I do think that what not a lot of people realize about the New Orleans Saints and Jameis Winston right now is that with Jameis under center, your quarterback actually has a chance to elevate and push the ball downfield, which, to be honest, over the last couple of years with Drew Brees under center, I think that's really held the Saints back. Like, in that playoff game against Tampa Bay, in the playoff game that they lost to Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, they couldn't push the ball downfield. And I think Jameis Winston does give you that really good ability. Alvin Kamara, one of the better offensive lines in the league. However, this is a Saint team that loses a lot. And I just think the Michael Thomas injury, and when you combine that with everything that was going on around it, obviously we saw that Sean Payton, the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, wasn't too thrilled about the way and the timing of Michael Thomas's surgery. I think that actually is some cause for concern for the Saints here. I think it's a year in transition. I think they'll have their good moments. They'll have their bad moments. I have them finishing at 9-8. Their defense is still really good. They have some names on that defense being led by, of course, Cameron Jordan. Obviously, Lattimore is banged up. I think that's going to be a huge loss. They actually just decided to make a move today, bringing in cornerback Bradley Roby. It's looking like he's going to fill Lattimore's spot. They have Ken Krull. They have Desmond Trufant. I really don't like the way this New Orleans Saints defense is looking right now, to be honest with you. They have some older guys like Demario Davis and Kwan Alexander. Davis is a really good player. He could play, obviously, but at this point in his career, I don't know if he's a guy that could just lead the Saints defense, put the defense on his back, and I just don't know if this Saints defense in general is going to be able to win games for New Orleans. Jameis is good, but he's erratic. I think he'll be up and down. I think he'll have some really good moments. I think he will still have some bad moments, and I just don't love the weapons that he has. Marquez Callaway, good young receiver, but this guy's your number one receiver. Traquan Smith, Will Jordan Humphrey, Deontay Harris, like all fine players with a lot of potential, but they just haven't really proved anything yet. And when it comes to Sean Payton, I'll say this. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like, what he's done with the Saints since he's gotten there has been super impressive, and I'm really not trying to sound like a hater. I just think if you look deeper and deeper into the Saints and the games they've lost over the last couple years, especially since that Super Bowl championship, I actually think that you could make an argument Sean Payton is a little bit of an overrated coach. In a similar way to Mike Tomlin, there have been many games throughout the last couple years where the Saints should have gone in expecting to win and rolled. They were just significantly the better team and lost. Everyone talks about that NFC Championship game against the Rams, and I totally understand. The refs did not help out the New Orleans Saints cause at all in that game. But I'm not going to lie. That year, when I watched that Saint team play, they looked like, to me, a team that could win the Super Bowl and a team that could have easily been the best team in football. But what was the problem? If you are a great team, you still find a way to win that game. The Saints got the ball back in overtime, and Drew Brees threw a pick. I've never been a huge fan of Sean Payton and the way he uses Taysom Hill, I, to be honest, thought there would have been a decent shot that Taysom Hill was named the Saints starting quarterback this year, not because he necessarily deserved it and that he was going to be better than Jameis, but just because of the fact that I think Sean Payton has this weird fascination with him and wanted him deep down to be the quarterback of the future when Drew Brees ultimately retired. That's why he was using him so often, and I think it ultimately, in some ways, ruined the rhythm that New Orleans Saints team had. And that was my main problem with the Saints over the last couple of years. They lose a lot. I think they take a slight step back, finishing at 9-8. I think it is a year of transition, but their talent will win them 9 games. I have the Saints finishing third place in the NFC South with a record of 9-8. Their over-under right now is 9, so I think that will hit on the spot. Finishing in fourth place in this division, I will predict them to have a record of 5-12, will be the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons, if you've watched this team over the past couple of years, they've been one of the most frustrating teams in the NFL. There have been very few teams that really, it started in that Super Bowl game against the Patriots when they were down 28-3. There were very few teams in the NFL that have lost as many just devastating, heartbreaking games as this Atlanta Falcon team. And it's unfortunate because I think Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. He's had a really good career, but he just has never really been able to get to the big game and win it. And this season, the Falcons are another team that are going through some transition. I really like Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator and a play caller. I think that Tennessee is really going to see early on just how much he really meant to that offense. But I don't know about him as a head coach. Do I know that he could be the guy that ultimately turns this Atlanta Falcons defense around? He will bring in Dean Pease, former defensive coordinator of the Ravens and the Titans. He's going to be the DC over there for Atlanta. And I think this is going to be one of the worst defenses in the league, to be quite honest with you. I think the Falcons are going to be a team that gets in a lot of shootouts. They're going to be able to put up a lot of points, but they're also going to give up a lot of points. And Matt Ryan, he's a veteran quarterback. They really didn't have a choice but to bring him back for this season. Obviously, he's still making a lot of money. But I did think that the Falcons maybe should have considered drafting a quarterback in this year's draft. They obviously ended up going with Kyle Pitts, the young tight end from the University of Florida. And Pitts is a kid that he's big time, man. He has all the physical attributes. He was the highest drafted tight end in the history of the NFL draft, going at number 4 overall. And I think it was a really impressive career he put together, especially his last season at the University of Florida. You combine him with Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, some good young receivers over there. I think the Falcons are going to be able to put up points. I just think they're going to need to find their quarterback of the future, and they're just going to need to keep on improving guys on the defensive side of the ball, because right now, quite frankly, their defense just is not good enough. Their secondary has a lot to be desired. A.J. Terrell as your number 1 corner, good player, but I didn't love where the Falcons drafted him. I think that first round was a little bit of a reach. Eric Harris, Deron Harmon, like Fabian Moreau, these are just these are just veteran corners that I don't think have much left. And when you go up against some of the more dynamic offenses in the NFL, you could be in trouble. I think Arthur Smith is going to be a decent coach. It just may take some time. His team will be able to put up points, but defense is the number 1 concern. So, to recap once again, NFC South predictions. I'm going to have the defending Super Bowl champion Bucs winning this division with a record of 13-4. I'll take Carolina in second with a record of 10-7. The Saints in third with a record of 9-8. And in last, 5-12, Atlanta Falcons.